If I was to cite one thing that makes my job as a media composer possible, that would be the humble project template, something I have honed over the decades. I think the Japanese call it Kaizen, constant gradual improvements. In this video, I'm about to start a big new job and talk you through how I build these templates, why I think they're important, and why I think it's important to create a new template for every show that you undertake, because you may be stuck with these things for years. Right, let's take it to the shed. So for those of you who haven't seen any of my template tutorials, there are 3 reasons I use templates. One is to restrict your choices so that you're not trawling through terabytes and terabytes of sounds that you may have on your drives. The second, in so doing, you create a cohesive sound and way of working, composing for a project. Instead of kind of going, I need to make this scary, I'll just grab a sound from that drive over there, you're going, well, this is what I've created as my template, my virtual band, if you will. And so what I need to do is find a compositional way of achieving that amount of scariness. So instead of being kind of lazy and just reaching for different sonics, what you're doing is working with the band that you've got. The third and most vital part of templates is simply it makes it possible to do what we do as media composers. So this is a project that's going to be a minimum of 24 half-hour episodes. I imagine there's going to be a lot of cues. So I will be duplicating my working environment over not tens, not hundreds, but potentially thousands of iterations. And in so doing, if there are any gripes or things that I have to do that are repetitive, that add on time, this will have a profound effect on the amount of time I've got to actually do my best work. It also is a nose-to-tail way of maintaining a hyper-detailed sense of consistency so that if anything goes wrong, it becomes very easy to troubleshoot. So let's have a look here, and you'll see at the top here we have Pro Tools. My main DAW, my sequencer, if you will, is Logic, and this handles each individual cue. So one Logic file per cue, a moment of music, a start to a finish, whether that be a stab or an entire action sequence or a part of an action sequence. Pro Tools is the all-seeing eye, Sauron, if you will. This is the one that handles the arc of the entire show. And indeed, I may decide to do multiple shows on the same timeline and simply go from hour 1 for show 1, hour 2 for show 2, so that I can cross-reference different cues. As I get further on through the blocks, I will develop a shorthand, a quick way of working, and I'll want to cross-reference cues from all over the seasons. It doesn't have to just be the all-seeing arc for this particular episode. It can, because it can handle multiple quick times, be the all-seeing eye for the entire season of 24 episodes. I think worth trying out anyway. So let's just focus in on how I've prepared this Logic template. Every job I do, I start from scratch, new template, with a hope, there'll be some old favourites in there, but it's about building different environments to work in so you're not going back to your old tricks every time. What's more, I find that you will get little corruptions that will creep into Logic files that then get multiplied and corrupted further throughout the running of a series. So I like to just go back to a blank screen, clear of any bugs or little quirks, and start from scratch. But more importantly, each show's workflow is different, whether you're working on computer games or films, on TV. Materials you have to provide different departments will differ, so the way that you route everything up, set everything up, will change. So we've got our main edit page here, and you'll see that my tracks are organised into Logic stacks. Now, I don't want to focus in too much on the Logic-centric stuff. These ideas should apply to whatever DAW you're working in. Okay, so let's open the string stacks. Now, you may ask 2 questions. Why do you put individual articulations onto individual tracks and don't just key switch? This is because, if you have a look here, we've got strings long are in their own stack and strings short are in their own stack. The reason for this is each stack has to contain its own reverb, But also, short samples are more reverberant than long samples. Many reasons for this, which I've explained in previous videos. So therefore, the amount of reverbs that you send or receive from them should differ. What I've done in this instance is actually re-attenuate the return of the reverb. So the reverb still being entertained, nice signal-to-noise ratio, but it's just ducked back from the return so it doesn't get too swampy. A little less reverb than for the shorts, and maybe a little bit more reverb for our effects and trems here. So we're back to 0 there. And let's have a look at the loops. Again, we've re-attenuated that back so it just doesn't get too mushy. Now, if I was using a mix engineer, I would output all of these stacks as my multi-tracks. That is as deep as I think I'd like to go. Otherwise, what you find yourself doing is breaking your mix in order for them to spend 75% just remaking what you had before improving on it. And I've just done a feature film where this was the depth of the multi-tracks, and Jake Jackson was very happy with that. But because I'm currently thinking that I'm not going to be outputting all of these multis, I've got the verbs in each stack. If I was going to output the multis, I would probably do it in a slightly different way or place the verbs in a slightly different part of the signal chain so that they weren't automatically printed. That's the one thing I would take off for a mix engineer. So we've got winds long, and I've got a mixture of symphonics, and then we've got some big old Albion 1, which are great for just sketching stuff out with. And then I'm a massive fan of Albion Neo. I love Tundra, which is this kind of cold library that we've got, but I just find it a bit big. Whereas Neo is not only a great chamber ensembles library, it's also got some of those very tender Tundra-y techniques, but it's just a little bit more defined where you can hear each individual instrument. So I've got winds, and then I've got some winds off Albion Solstice as well. And again, because they're not recorded in the same room, I want independent control of the reverbs. I might need to overcompensate in Solstice for the winds recorded in the Hall at Air Studios. We've got brass, and this is really everything I'm likely to use. You'll see that we've got legatos, longs, and then atu, legatos, longs, and if there is a cuivre, I'll use those. Then we've got our brass short, and stuff like multi-tongues really helpful alongside rips. There's going to be lots of action cues. And again, folk brass, long, short, but in separate stems because I may need to compensate and re-attenuate the reverb levels accordingly. I've got folk bellows, lots of drones. I've got shorts, plucks, and again, most of this is Albion Solstice and guitars. The strings, I haven't named where they're coming from, unless they're coming from somewhere other than our chamber strings. So again, I mainly focus on ensembles and then use legatos to pick out individual lines. This just keeps the template to a manageable level. And again, you'll see that we've got the shorts and all of those different types of shorts there. And again, this may grow as I build up stuff. And then again, some Solstice stuff. I think that this is going to be okay. I can always just adjust the send levels. So you see bus 27, in bus 27, and I'm using FabFilter Pro R Concert Hall Vienna on everything. So it's a unified reverb, even if there are multiple instances of it. Now, why aren't I using my outboard? Well, this is all to do with stemming, and this is why we have to have individual reverbs for individual, well, I'm using it for individual stacks, but certainly for individual stems. You don't want your string reverb coming out of your brass reverb in your stems. I'll get to the stems in a minute. And the reason why I prefer FabFilter, it doesn't require a dongle. And the reason why I've organized the whole of this template in this manner with everything loading into each logic cue is because I want to be able to take this anywhere. And what I will do is, once I'm really happy with the template, is I will load onto a portable drive all of the libraries that I'm using in this template so that I can instantly switch to my laptop or indeed, say, one of the machines down at Spitfire in London. That doesn't mean to say that I will be writing all over the world, but it's just so that if something needs to be fixed quick and I am traveling, I can attend to my client's needs. So we've got strings short, harms and trems, and then motions, loops, and stuff like that. And in fact, I made some really cool dedicated samples with a 24-piece band for this project that are being chopped up for me. I've then got folk, perk, and loops. And the reason why I've stuck these on separate stacks is it's highly likely that I'm going to want to produce these kind of things. Possibly on the stack header, I can add in compressor, low pass filters, that kind of stuff to give it a real produced sound. But I hate over compressing really big drums like the Darwin percussion and the Easter Island stuff. It just sounds terrible when you absolutely smash it with compression. Well, I'm really excited about combining the Solstice loops with Charlie Klaus's Hammers loops as well. So we've got a huge perk. We've got our more traditional untuned perk like temple blocks, wood block. Untuned metal is basically stuff like mark trees, tam-tam, some cymbals. A lot of people don't realise that Albion 1 in its legacy folder has the biggest cymbal ensemble we've ever recorded. I believe it's 4 players, and it's got that really hyped sound. Then tuned percussion is just timpani, and I've got the Spitfire Audio percussion timpani and Hans Zimmer timpani, which is 3 players. Mallets, including the nursery in Albion Solstice and then the more traditional ones. And again, if I really want to up the amount of reverb, I'll adjust the send value, and I think that that's going to work nicely. Then since all Albion Solstice, they're kind of, for me, I made these presets and they're really on the zeitgeist, I hope, believe. That's that. Now, a lot of you ask, well, surely, how does your machine handle that? Well, as you can see, nothing is on, nothing is loaded in. And it's very, very unlikely that I'm going to load everything in at any given point. But I imagine with the slightly more kind of demanding action sequences I expect to do, my laptop will probably grunt. I'll have to freeze tracks, this, that, and the other. But theoretically, on this unit, this should work just fine. This is a very powerful machine indeed. If you have a look there, it's got 28 2.5 gigahertz cores and 384 gigabytes. And what am I currently running at? I'm running at 128 buffer size, so it's nice and responsive. I may need to up that if it gets a little bit streaming bus problems, but we'll see. So finally, we've got soloists. Just made a provision for some audio going there. Probably won't be recording here, be recording around the corner in Castle Sound, and there's a provision for that there. We're monitoring through our auxiliaries. So these are a live auxiliary. So you'll see that all of the stacks bus to different stems, and you'll see these woodwinds all bus to the same stem, so that we've just got a wind stem terminating there, brass, bellows, plucks, strings, perk, mallets, synth stem, soloist stem. And that hopefully 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 stems is, I'd say, around the average number of stems that they'll want in the dub. Hopefully that'll give them the separation they need. They may not like me having all of the percussion summed together. I'd like to keep it together because I find it's quite easy to just disrupt how percussion interlinks with itself. So I'm hoping that'll be enough. But again, what may happen is deliver the first show, they request broader stems. I'll have to adjust all of the cues for that episode and then resave a new template for the show. And then you'll see that everything is outputting into the last bus that Logic has, bus 256. And there you go, is a sum that's made inside Logic. And that's what's fundamentally important, is the sum must be a sum, not something created from a different set of auxiliaries or anything like that. And this is why we can't use stuff like bus compression, and we've got to be careful about the amount that we push this sum. You know, basically, if I'm seeing this create cherries, what's happening is Logic will be limiting it, compressing it so it doesn't clip horrifically. And then what'll then happen is the mix engineer at the other end is not going to be able to recreate the compression or limiting or whatever happens at the brick wall end of Logic when he switches off the sum and actually starts monitoring from stems. So these are all on a group, but for some reason groups don't seem to be working on this iteration of Logic. So let's just do that. So when I've finished a cue, what I do is go into record with a duplicate set of not auxiliaries, but tracks
and then I monitor through that. So again, it's just literally a duplication of the auxiliaries, but they're tracks, stems, all the way to sum. And you'll notice these are numbered, and that's absolutely fundamental for our Pro Tools session. So my workflow would be to do that there. I'll leave it in the Logic file, and then I'll also export to the Pro Tools file and just leave it as the region name. You'll see that that will all be maintained there. Export that there. I will also at some point organize my Finder windows so they're all ergonomically make me happy. And so what we simply do then is pull those into here. And I haven't yet created these tracks, so this will be me completing my Pro Tools file. So we've got dialogue, effects, temp, and the video track. I have the frames switched off because the redraws can be a little bit cumbersome for the system. And then I will simply put those in there. Those are nicely created for me. And then what I'm going to do is duplicate those tracks. The way that we've numbered it, we've got the sum at the top, and that's the one we really want the engineers to first listen to. So what I'm going to do is mute all of these. Another great reason for using Pro Tools as our Sauron, and there's a video linked above about why I use it as this overseeing eye, is that when I then work on the next cue, I can review that cue, or maybe this cue and the next cue may overlap. So I'll be listening to the sum of that whilst I maybe write the next bit. And how do I synchronize? Well, we just do it via IC bus 1. I'd like to do a bit of MTC. And then again, with synchronization, we've got our incoming timecode, which is correct. And in it goes. And the reason we have two sets of these stems and sums is so that we can check aboard if things are overlapping, say, for example, in action sequences.
If you're a Logic user and you're interested in checking out this template, I've made a stripped back version without the contacts or the reverb, so you don't get loads of prompts. That way you can look at the routing and all of that kind of stuff. If you have any comments on the way I've created this template and ways in which I could improve it, please put them in the comments down below, alongside any things that you do with your templates. Thanks as always for watching. One of those always much appreciated. Do subscribe if you haven't done already, and ding that bell to be notified the next time I put a video up. See you soon. And check out how I've done the routing. Little bastard. Actually, it's a bumblebee. They're fine, aren't they?